It's Marvy Movil fun, not an Oscar-nominated masterpiece, and after a stressful day, that's just what I'm after. That is honestly how I feel about Assassin's Creed Shadows so far. It's not without flaws, but it's good. Hi, I'm That Plays Games, and this time we're diving headfirst into a pile of hay in Assassin's Creed Shadows. After playing a couple of hours of Assassin's Creed's latest iteration, Shadows, I felt I had to get my feelings about the game out. Despite being barely just past the opening, I've followed this franchise closely since the very beginning, expecting then thinking it would never happen, this feudal Japan setting ever since it was first hinted in the early days of the series, long before a codenamed Red even appeared on the radar. While the setting was never on the top of my dream Assassin's Creed settings, while the feudal Japan setting was never on the top of my list of dream Assassin's Creed settings, it sure was on it. So after all of these years, let's see what it offers. Now, I've been playing exclusively via cloud gaming on GeForce Now, jumping between phone, Logitech G Cloud, PC and TV. And keep in mind this video is very much a review in progress. So yeah, this is my first impressions of whether Shadows lives up to the years of hype, overcomes the recent troubles and criticism, or if it's an end of an era. It is familiar territory in many ways, classic Ubisoft open world, a statement that comes with both positives and negatives. Yeah, it brings in enough freshness, but crucially, yeah, at least to me it brings in enough freshness to feel worthwhile so far. So let's break down the good, the bad, and the interesting from my first few hours. First off, the feudal Japan setting. It's definitely a star. Ubisoft has, as always, poured an incredible amount of detail into recreating this world. The atmosphere is helped immensely by the absolutely stunning weather. Seriously, seeing a storm roll in or the sun filter through bamboo forests is breathtaking at times. It really managed to pull you in, which is exactly what I want from a title like this. They also included an immersive audio option, mixing Japanese with Portuguese and using subtitles. Conceptually, this is fantastic. The voice acting for both languages is impeccable. Practically though, it's a bit of a snag, because on smaller screens, like my phone or the G Cloud, which is where I play the most, the subtitles can be genuinely difficult to read at times if you're really not paying attention. And also, speaking of attention, if your attention drifts for even a second during a cutscene, you will miss key info, unless you're fluent, which I'm not in either Portuguese nor Japanese, which is kind of a bummer, because that undermines the immersive goal. Takes you out of it, and you lose track of what's happening. Ideally, you have your full attention to the game. But let's be honest, in this day and age, most of us don't. Which is a shame, because I love in theory I really love the feature, but I feel it falls a bit flat on the fact that I'm not adapted to it. I want to use it, but I realize while playing, I'm missing too much. I need to switch back to it, which is a bummer, because it's such a great idea. Anyway, luckily you can easily switch in the settings. Quick one-button switch, followed by a fast reload, and then you switch back from English to immersive mode or vice versa. Visually, beyond the incredible environments and effects, it's mostly very strong. However, while the world looks next-gen and a lot of the graphics is top-notch, the facial models of the characters are not always. They sometimes feel a bit dated. They are very classic Ubisoft. They're good, don't get me wrong, they're just not as good as the rest, which makes them a bit jarring. Especially if you compare it to other recent AAA titles. At the same time, it's part of the Ubisoft's Anvil engine charm, I guess. On the performance front, playing via GeForce Now has, as always, been fantastic. It's a really smooth experience across all of my devices, and the UI generally scales well, which is crucial for cloud gaming. No major complaints there at all. I did also give it a go very briefly through the newly launched, here in Sweden, Amazon Luna. Again, with no complaints. I think the GeForce Now offers better performance and graphics, but the Luna version is not bad. Granted, I've not given it enough time to form a full impression. At some point, I will review Luna. Don't worry about it. You know how I am. Anyway, the Shadows introduces dual protagonists. Again, reintroduces. You have Naoe, the shinobi, the classic assassin character, and Yasuke, the samurai. And this is where the gameplay kind of branches, because while I so far spent the majority of my time with Naoe, and her gameplay loop is exactly what I hoped for from the shinobi fantasy of style of game, it also feels very Assassin's Creedy. It's agile but fragile, or squishy if you will. You can fight, but the game heavily intensifies stealth. It feels like a welcome return to the roots, like Mirage's focus, which is a significant plus for me after Valhalla's more combat-heavy approach. The stealth mechanics themselves feel refined. It's satisfying to navigate environments. The level design actually feels enhanced by being more limited than the previous titles in the open world series. Not every wall is climbable anymore, and not every mountain path is traversable compared to how it was in the previous games. This makes you think a bit more tactically, observe patrols, and find the intended routes, of which there are usually many, making infiltration feel more like a puzzle, which I like. That's what Assassin's Creed has been lacking, I feel like, in the last couple of years. And the new light or visibility meter, or whatever it is almost like a great addition as well, even though I don't fully understand it yet. Giving clear feedback on how exposed you are. And the little touches like being able to extinguish lanterns to create pockets of darkness all adds welcome layers to that stealth sandbox. Yasuke, on the other hand, is a bit more of a powerhouse. Admittedly, my time with him so far is very limited, but he's definitely embodies the samurai archetype. He feels weightier and more direct, bringing back memories of Eivor's combat style from Valhalla rather than the fleetier. And it makes sense, because, I mean, Valhalla sold really well. People loved Valhalla, but also Valhalla was a step away from the classic Assassin's Creed. This gives you a bit of both. However, just like with Valhalla, the combat feels meaty and impactful, but it also feels a bit too smooth compared to how meaty and impactful it is, if that makes sense. Like you do a hit which feels like strong, heavy, and kind of slow because it's like so powerful, but then you do a quick, nimble dodge out of the way just because that's just how the mechanics work, and it feels like you're suddenly swapping to Naoe for a split second and then back to this heaviness. And I don't know, it's it feels like sometimes he moves like an assassin and sometimes like a brute, making neither feel real. It lacks a certain grit also occasionally. But anyway, it's very early days from my Yasuke experience. He might grow on me, although he's pretty tall already. The contrast between the two characters, though, is pretty stark and provides genuine gameplay variety, which I'm not too sure about was needed, though. But at any rate, it's nice that it's there. But what about the RPG aspects of it all? Assassin's Creed has fluctuated in how deep it leans into the RPG mechanics since Origins. Odyssey was the peak of RPG mechanics for the series, I think. Origins played around with it, and Valhalla was honestly a bit of a mess. Shadows seem to have found a really nice middle ground. The RPG elements are definitely present, skills, gear leveling, but they feel more balanced and less overwhelming than in Odyssey perhaps. It supports the core gameplay rather than dominating it. The skill tree specifically makes a massive improvement over Valhalla's convoluted system. It goes back to a more Odyssey-like one, but still expands a bit on the concept. It's clean, understandable, and makes choosing progression paths feel more meaningful, which I really enjoy. The overall user interface is just gorgeous. It's clean, stylish, and thematic, just like always. Top marks, again. There are smaller systems too, like a meditation minigame involving button sequences, and visually it's lovely, very zen. Functionally, well, maybe it's just me needing more practice, or maybe I had a bad latency day with because I think I was playing on my phone over 5G. But anyway, I did find myself fumbling with the inputs quite a bit during it, which made it be much longer than it needed to be, which became almost a bit annoying, despite the fact that I really appreciated the idea and the aesthetic behind it. It's a minor point, but still. And also, I feel like I have to mention the weather dynamics and seasons again. It's a great addition. They're not just cosmetic, they actually impact the gameplay, which is very exciting. I can't wait to fully explore that. As for the narrative, in my opinion, the most important piece of a story-based game is the narrative. The historical narrative in Japan is so far really compelling, pretty much like any other Assassin's Creed game. Yes, there are very familiar tropes here, maybe even some cliches. honestly, they're handled enjoyably, and I'm not looking for something groundbreaking when I play Assassin's Creed. I want more Assassin's Creed. It's hitting that sweet spot between being intriguing and fun without demanding too much of classic, basic revenge story in a sense. And that's been done before, not only in general, but in this series specifically. But it's done well, so I don't care. As I said before, think Marvel movie fun rather than like Oscar contender. And sometimes, you know, after a long day especially, that's exactly what you want from the game. In fact, after recording this, I will probably lie down in bed and play for a little bit, even though I really should sleep. However, the modern day. Dear God, this is where my enthusiasm dips. And it's not for the reasons why you would normally think, why other people complain about usually. Since the very first games, fans and critics alike has questioned, critiqued, and challenged the very existence of the modern day storyline. I've seen people say, just get rid of it already, for years, since the very first one. And as a result, it's been dialed back, given little love, here too, at least so far, and I genuinely wish Ubisoft would recapture the magic here, because since the conclusion of the Desmond Miles arc, the modern day narrative has felt inconsistent at best, often neglected. There are bits and pieces of Odyssey and Valhalla that show really glimmers of potential, but it hasn't felt essential or particularly engaging for quite a long while. And this matters, because I don't know how many players actually understand this, but like, people say they don't care about the modern day, but I believe it's a glue, the crucial glue that holds the franchise concept together. It contextualizes why we're experiencing these historical periods and how we're experiencing them, and gives us a greater narrative to push us through playing the deeper part of the history part. The modern day story is what gets us from point A to point B in the historical storyline. It doesn't matter how good the historical storyline is if the modern day storyline isn't there to push us through it. Because currently, I feel like it fails both new and old players. New players don't understand why it's there at all. They don't understand what it's doing. It's just weird and sci-fi and doesn't explain barely anything to them. For old players, we miss it. We like, either we didn't care back then, or we didn't understand it back then, or we've forgotten a lot of things. And the fact of the matter is, some of the most like biggest story beats in the modern day story happened off camera or in a comic book 15 years ago, or maybe 10 years ago at least. They need to tie it back together and, you know, reintroduce people to this in a good way and have a vision. It needs a strong vision, not to be abandoned or discarded, but to be revitalized. Unfortunately, at least so far, it doesn't seem like Shadows will be the remedy to that. I don't want it to be. So, wrapping up my first impressions after a few hours with Assassin's Creed Shadows, how does it feel overall? Honestly, pretty darn good. It absolutely meets the expectations set by its premise and the legacy of the series. It delivers that familiar, satisfying core Assassin's Creed loop, but layers on a meaningful refinements and welcome new ideas, especially in this stealth and level design departments. Now, is it perfect? No. The dated faces are noticeable, the subtitle issue is practical annoyance, and my ongoing disappointment with the modern day story persists. But the highs, the stunning world, the engaging historical plot, fun and familiar yet fresh enough, gameplay and the refined systems significantly outweigh the lows so far. It's more of the same, transformed into a comfortable, engaging, and often breathtaking experience with just enough freshness to feel worthwhile playing. It's really good, but it's not without flaws. It's the comfort food gaming, the fun summer blockbuster sandbox, and, you know, some good fun. It's not meant to be a perfect must-play game of the year contender, I think. It's the bread and butter of the AAA gaming industry, and I, for one, can always find room for a nice sandwich. So that's where I stand after my initial hours within the future of Japan. I'm definitely intrigued to play more and see how my opinions evolve. But what about you? Are you playing Shadows? What are your first impressions? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, but keep it clean. I've seen the comment section of some other Assassin's Creed Shadow videos, and some people are really angry about something. See you in the next one. Matane!